Hi all, I'm back with another professional who needs guidance on Salesforce.
Hi, I'm Samantha and work in the marketing team of XY Invest. We get numerous requests from customers asking for quotes. Sending the correct quotations to customers, and that too in time, is a headache. As you know, time and accuracy are key mantra here. My company is using Salesforce in the sales team. However, I'm told that I can implement it in my team effectively. Is that right?
Yes, Samantha, that's correct. It's a popular myth that Salesforce is for salespeople. You can use it for various other business activities.
However, I'm confused. How will Salesforce help us in quotation generation and improve customer communication?
You know, Samantha, that's a pertinent question. Salespeople are not able to quickly generate and email quotations to prospective customers and are slowly moving to Salesforce for automating this process. Generating proposals can be a drag on sales team productivity. Editing Word documents, requesting approvals, even desk calculators get involved. With the quotes feature in Salesforce, salespeople can quickly and efficiently generate a PDF and either download or email directly to a contact in Salesforce. When customers request revisions, they have the ability to edit discount percentages, add or remove line items, and even use different templates entirely. This lesson will explain how to expedite the process of generating quotes and sending it to customers.
What are we waiting for? Let's start.
In this lesson, what you'll learn is how to create a quote record, create a quote template, generate a quote PDF, email a quote PDF, and modify existing quote templates. The first thing we're going to go over is creating a quote record in Salesforce. When creating a quote record, there's a few things you want to keep in mind. Each opportunity can have multiple associated quotes, and this is important to understand because you can have one opportunity that represents your sale, but if you've got clients that ask for a quote from you in 2 or 3 different versions, you can have multiple quote records associated. You can also create activities and upload documents to quotes just like you can on other objects in Salesforce. So you can log tasks, upload, PDF documents or any kind of supporting materials that went into, was used for consideration in creating the quote. That can all be uploaded there as well. You can also create an approval process, and this is really important because a lot of Salesforce customers want to create an approval process around the discounting aspect of quotes. So if you want to put some restrictions on how much a salesperson can discount or when they can discount or even on a per client basis, per customer basis, you can certainly do that on the quote record using approval processes in Salesforce. So now we're actually going to jump into Salesforce and create a quote record. So I'm logged into Salesforce here, and over on the left-hand side, I'm just going to click on a recent opportunity that I was looking at. We've got a cloud creations opportunity here. As I scroll down, I see that I have an area called quotes. So what I can do is actually click on this new quote button, and it's going to open up a new quote record for me. Now, for the quote name, it's similar to that of an opportunity. There's a lot of debate that goes into what to name the quote. Well, it's important to choose a name that works because it's going to end up being the file name and stamped all over that quote PDF when you end up sending it out to your customers. So I'm just going to call this the Cloud Creations Proposal. Now, in this particular Salesforce org, I've got a lot of different fields here. So I've got fields for different notes and different dates, etc. And if you see here, I actually have a required field. So I'm just going to fill that in and click Save. So any fields that are required, just like creating other records in Salesforce, you'll need to make sure that those are filled in. Now, the next thing I need to do is synchronize this quote to the opportunity. So what that means is because you can have multiple quotes on an opportunity, you need to choose which one is synchronized to the opportunity for forecasting purposes. So what that means is if you've got 3 different quotes, one for $5,000, one for $10,000, one for $15,000, you need to choose which of those quotes you want to sync to the opportunity with. And usually that's determined by the quote you feel most likely you'll get signed. And you could choose the lowest priced one if you feel that's the most likely to get signed, or the largest one. Doesn't really matter what the rules are on that. It just matters on which one do you actually want to start forecasting. So as you can see here, I can click sync and it will sync this quote to the opportunity. And if I want to stop the sync and change it and sync a different quote, I can certainly do so. So let's look at the opportunity again. And if I scroll back down, you can see I've got my quote record there. Now, if I wanted to create a second quote, I can do so easily by clicking on that new quote button. Now, if I want to edit the quote, I can go back here and make any changes to it. I can add line items, I can attach files, all of that. And I can adjust the fields just like I'd adjust the fields elsewhere in Salesforce. So a quote's not that useful unless you actually have some line items on it. So I'm going to scroll down here and click on Add Line Item. And what it's going to do is it's going to prompt me for my price book. So I'm going to click Save. That's my price book there. And then I can see a list of different products in the system. So I'm just going to choose these top 3 and click Select. And then here I'm going to choose the quantity. I'm just going to choose, let's say, 10, 1, and 1 and click Save. And what's going to happen is these line items are then going to be added to my quote record. So you can see here that we've got a grand total of 2,100 because of those individual line items that I added to the quote. So now I've got a quote with line items. We see a total of 2,100. And if I jump back to the opportunity, you can see here that amount has been locked and it's being synchronized to that quote record that I chose to be synced. And you can also see the individual products that were added to the opportunity from that quote record. So, just for this, part of the lesson, it's just important to know you need to create an individual quote record off of the opportunity, and you also need to add those line items to the quote record as well. So for this next part, we're going to discuss creating a quote template. When creating a quote template, there's a few things to keep in mind. You can create multiple quote templates for different purposes. You can also activate or deactivate the quote templates accordingly. And so what that means is you can have different templates for different use cases, different purposes. For example, you can have a quote template where pricing is 100% upfront, or you can have a quote template where maybe your customers are paying you on delivery, that type of thing, and everything in between. So coupled with quote templates in the fields in Salesforce, you can really customize what the terms are of that contract, on a per opportunity basis. So you can generate a proposal that's really custom tailored to the exact situation by which you're proposing. You don't just have to use one template. So most Salesforce customers do start with the template and they go from there, but it's not uncommon for a company to have maybe 3 or 4 different templates for 3 or 4 of those different uses. So now we're going to actually jump into Salesforce and create a quote template. So I'm on the Salesforce homepage, and what I'm going to do is click on Setup in the top right corner. And over here on the left-hand side, I'm going to come over Customize, and then I'm going to choose Quotes. And then if you can see here, I've got this Quote Templates option. So I'm going to click on that link, and you can see that I've got a couple of different quotes in the system. We're going to start by creating a new one. So I'm going to click on this New button here, and I'm going to name it. I'm going to call it my test template. Now I can grab from one of the existing templates. So I'm just going to leave it as a standard template and copy that down to create my test template. Now I'm going to click Save. So it takes a few seconds to load, but once it loads, you can see that we now have, a standard template here. So what I want to do is I actually want to save this, and I want to see it here. So, I can actually activate this template if I want to use it. I'm not ready to use it yet, but you can see that it's been created. So I'm going to come back in here and click Edit and actually start making changes. So on this template, there are a lot of fields that I really don't need. For example, I don't really need the quote number there. Don't even need the expiration date or fax number. Nobody uses fax anymore. So I can, clean up this template accordingly. And then on the flip side, if I want to do something like, drag in the account name, I can just drag and drop that there accordingly. And then down here, the products that we sell don't have any kind of shipping or handling charges. And, we never do discounts. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that off. So at this point, I'm just going to click Save and actually save this template. Now in order to use it, I actually want to activate it. So I'm going to click this Activate link, and that's going to go ahead and activate my template. Now, for some reason, I'm still working on the template and I don't want others in the system to use it. I can click Deactivate, and of course, it will pull that out of being an available template to use. But I'm going to go ahead and activate it, and we're going to go ahead and create a PDF in the next lesson here. For this next lesson, we're going to talk about actually generating that quote PDF from the PDF record. So there's a few things to keep in mind. First, you can generate a PDF directly from the quote record. You can't do it from the opportunity record. It's got to be from the quote record. And you basically have the option of either saving and downloading the PDF to your computer, or you can actually choose to have it emailed, directly to a customer or a contact that you have in Salesforce. So this is important to keep in mind because, a lot of times Salesforce customers want to generate a quote off the opportunity, that PDF, but the reality is you do need to go down to the quote object in order to have that PDF generated. So now I'm going to go ahead and jump back into Salesforce and generate this quote PDF. So I'm logged into Salesforce here, and over on the left-hand side, I'm going to jump back to my opportunity that I was working on. And then I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and click on that quote. So now that I'm actually on this quote record here, I can click on Create PDF in this drop-down arrow sort of displays, and I can choose which template I want to generate from. So as you can see here, we've got this test template that we created. We also have a few others, but for this purpose, I'm just going to use this test template. So I'm going to left-click on that test template, and as you can see, it's going to generate this PDF for me. So at this point, all I want to do is, review it, make sure everything's in order, and you can see that those changes we made were actually applied here. So we've got the account name, which we added. We removed, some of the discounting, some of the other line items here, like the shipping. And at this point, I'm ready to just save to the quote. Now, what just happened is Salesforce generated that PDF and it just saved it as an attachment directly on the quote record. So if I want to see it again, I can click on View, and I can download it, save it to my computer, and then I can throw it into an email if I want. So these would be the steps to actually downloading and saving that PDF directly to your computer. So the next thing we're going to talk about here is emailing a quote PDF. There's a few points to keep in mind when emailing a quote directly from Salesforce. You can email it directly, but you need to make sure that the contact that you want to send it to is a contact in the system. And when you do that, the PDF is automatically saved directly to the quote record. So pretty simple, but the only catch is you need to make sure that your recipient is actually a contact in Salesforce. So now we're back into Salesforce, and we're going to talk about sending that quote directly via email. So over on the left-hand side, I can just click under Recent Items, and I can scroll down to the bottom here. And if you see into the quote PDF, there's this email link. I'm going to go ahead and click that. So now I need to actually type out who I want to send it to. So in this case, I want to send it to Justin Davis, myself, and I'm going to make the subject proposal. Now at this point, you can make changes to the body if you want. You can even select a template. But if you notice here, the proposals has already been attached as a PDF. So all I need to do at this point is click Send. And simple as that, the page will reload and you'll see that, that the email's been sent. Now, you won't get any kind of confirmation of that quote going out, but rest assured, if the page reloads and comes back here, then that email was sent to the recipient. The next thing we're going to go over here is making changes and modifying quote templates. As I briefly demonstrated before, you can drag and drop quote object fields directly onto the page layout. You can create sections and blank spaces for more customization. You can also add images and footers for additional graphics. So if you look at the template over on the right-hand side here, you can actually see that we've got a company logo in the top left corner, and there's some sections there that sort of look like a contract. So in Salesforce, you have the ability to add fields and graphics and sections, and customize it pretty well. The quote template in Salesforce does fall short in a couple of different areas, though. You don't have the ability to group products together, like bundling products. You can't do that, but you can simply add line items, throw your logo on there, and be generating proposals in less than a day. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump into Salesforce. So I'm back into Salesforce, and I'm going to click on Setup in the top right corner. And over on the left-hand side, I'm going to go to Customize, Quotes, and then I'm going to grab my templates area again. So now I'm back into my template area, and I'm going to go ahead and edit that template, that test template that I created. So as you can see here, there are, a lot of fields, and, honestly, most customers don't need all these fields. So what I'm going to do is I can actually remove entire sections. And if I want to, I can really just sort of start over. For example, I can remove tax information, subtotal, total price, and get rid of that. I can throw in like a contact name here instead of just the account and organization. I can reorder these different fields. If I want to, for that logo, I can drag and drop this image field up to the top here, and then I can actually insert a logo directly into this quote if I want. In this case, I'm going to leave that alone. But all of the different fields that you have on the quote record can actually be brought into this record. So, for example, discount, let's say I want to add that, I can add that discount field, and all the different fields that you might create. So a lot of companies will go ahead and create a lot of custom fields directly on the quote record, and then add those to the quote PDF. So that way when you go to generate a PDF, it's merging in those fields, if that makes sense. For example, if we want to add whatever the payment plan is, maybe over here on the left-hand side, we can certainly do that. So any of the fields that you create on a quote can be added to the quote template. So for example, I've got some custom fields here. So I'm looking behind the scenes at the quote custom object. So you can see I've got quite a few custom fields here. So any of these fields can be added, and so you can really get creative with what you want the output to be of that particular template through a combination of custom fields like formula fields, workflow rules to update different text that you may have on the quote, and the like. So and another important consideration, of course, is as I was making those changes, then my changes weren't saved because I navigated away. I also have the ability to choose whether or not the header is displayed. So if I click on that header there, you can see I can hide the title. I can also hide field labels if I want and make it a 1-column or 2-column layout. In this case, I don't want to hide the field labels or the section. I'm going to click OK. So you can see that brightens up that section there. So if you want to actually have sections on your template, then go ahead and remove those titles. Uncheck the hide title checkbox. And then if you want to make sections, you can call it, overview or, whatever the contract would be. And so you can start building out your contract on a, section by section basis there. So we have, overview terms, we'll call this, address information as well. And so you can start to sort of logically group, the proposal. And then down here under quote line items, this is really important. You have the ability to modify which fields are displayed. And we also want to actually expose that quote line items header. We think that would be useful. So here you can see product, that would be the name of the product that's actually on the quote, the date, the list price, and sales price. Now, we don't want to actually show the list price, so we're going to go ahead and remove that. We also don't want to show the discount, so we're going to remove that as well. Now, what we're left with is the sales price and the total price. Well, those are fairly redundant, so I'm going to get rid of sales price. And so by making these changes, it really cleans up the proposal and allows you to just show what you want displayed. Now over here, we need a description. So I'm going to add line item description, and I'm going to move that around. So now we have product, line item description, date, quantity, and price. Now, the date's a funny one. We really don't need the date on a line item. It's kind of odd that it's there, so I'm going to remove that as well. So if you can see what I've done here, we've got the name of the product and a description, the quantity and total price. That looks a lot better. So now I'm going to click OK, and you can see Salesforce sort of snap those changes into place. We also don't charge tax, so I'm going to get rid of tax. I also don't want, subtotal or even total price displayed. So I've drastically cleaned up this proposal here and really removed the line items that, the different fields and line items that aren't needed, and, added in the fields that are. So now I'm ready to save. So once I save that template, it's now available for others to use. It's live in the system. And if I want to ever change it again, of course, I can always come back and edit the template likewise. So it's very, very simple in Salesforce to edit the template. The template is somewhat limited because you basically deal with, fields, and, you can also have, like blank space and sections in here, but basically you're limited to the fields and the products in Salesforce to generate the quote. So it's a little bit limited, but, there's nothing faster than using the quote template if you want to start generating proposals right away. So let's see what they did. I'm logged back into Salesforce. I'm going to click on Setup in the top right-hand corner. Over on the left-hand side, I'm going to click on Customize, Quotes, and then down here, we're back at the templates. So what United Containers did is they came to the templates area, they clicked New, and just like we did, they actually created a template right in Salesforce for their salespeople to use right away. So I created this new template called Template A. I can make any changes I need and click Save. And then always remember, once you've created a new template, you need to activate it. So now I'm going to go ahead and activate that template. So once you create a quote, don't overlook the fact that the salespeople are going to need training on how to actually generate that quote. So that's the other step that United Containers took in that particular use case. So you need to train them that you can't just create an opportunity anymore. You have to create an opportunity and a quote record, and then off the quote record, you can actually generate your templates. Now, you can also write some code in Salesforce, which isn't on the Salesforce exam. You can write code that automatically creates a quote record for you. So there's some steps you can take to cut down on the number of clicks, a salesperson would need to take in order to generate this PDF. But as far as out-of-the-box functionality is concerned, make sure that users are trained that they need to create a quote record off that opportunity. So some key takeaways for this lesson include Salesforce quotes can generate PDFs quickly and easily from opportunities, products are added as line items to quote records, and quotes can be saved and downloaded or emailed directly to customers.
Thanks, Justin. This certainly helped. Now I'll get cracking on those quotes.
You are welcome, Samantha. Along with quote generation, companies are also worried that they are not able to manage the inbound customer inquiries effectively. I'll demonstrate a solution to this in the next lesson.
Really? Then I think I will stay a bit more. This might be applicable to us.
Hi guys, I'm here with the next professional and a new aspect of Salesforce to look at.
Hi, I'm Martin, a customer service manager of XY Networks. Our company deals with both technical support and customer service. Of late, we have been struggling to manage the inbound customer inquiries and issues efficiently. My boss told me that the management will get us trained in Salesforce shortly.
Well, that's good. I believe it will help them in their career growth.
I know Salesforce helps in managing sales effectively. However, how is it going to help us in managing inbound customer inquiries?
Martin, that's a common misconception. Salesforce is a part of, but not limited to, sales. It can be successfully implemented in different aspects of running any business. Customer service can be a tough department to work in. Customers calling, emailing, chatting, texting, posting, all of this can cause even the best customer service teams to fall apart. With the Service Cloud, companies can get control over these issues, start managing their time better, and get meaningful reports from Salesforce. Metrics such as average number of cases per day, cases by issue, time to resolution on a per customer service rep basis, these are all the foundation on which the Service Cloud is built. Let us go through this lesson together to better understand this.
Okay, let's start.
In this lesson, what you'll learn is creating a case, creating case assignment rules, creating case escalation rules, enabling solutions, creating solutions, attaching solutions to cases, creating a web-to-case form, and creating an email-to-case address. So the first step in the Service Cloud is creating cases, which we'll talk about first. Something to keep in mind when creating cases is that there are some required fields such as status and case origin. There are optional fields such as contact name that can be useful, and you can also choose ownership based on assignment rules. So the fundamental use of a case is to serve as a ticket for customer issues or any kind of interactions you have, after a sale is made, whereas opportunities are used for the pre-sales process, which we went over. Cases are really there for any kind of interactions that you want to track between yourself and the customer, such as a billing problem or, there's a product issue, something along those lines. So that's what cases are used for. So now we're actually going to jump into Salesforce and create a case. So I'm logged into Salesforce, and the first thing I'm going to do is click on the Contacts tab, and I'm going to click on the contact that I want to open a case for. So I'm going to click on Winter Paxton's names here, and I'm going to scroll down. Now if you see this related list area called Cases, that's exactly where you want to go. I'm going to click on this New Case button here, and now I'm presented with the new case page. So just to talk through these different fields, the case owner is going to be that individual that's going to own the resolution of this case. So at any given time, whoever that owner is of the case is the person responsible for dealing with the customer and ultimately getting their issue resolved. It's also the person that's either going to get credit for actually closing out the case or the person that's going to show up on a report if the case is not resolved in a certain amount of time. The contact name is the person that you're actually working with to resolve the case. So many companies have, points of contact and designated individuals to deal with technical support. In this case, we would have Winter as that point of contact for the case here. So the next field is the account name. So account name is actually the company. So it's automatically populated because we created the case off of the contact record, which is the recommended way to actually create a case manually. So that account name is automatically filled in there. If it's not correct, you can always delete that out and change it, but it's populated by default based on the account on the contact. Next, we have the status field. So there's a couple of default options such as on hold, escalated, and new. So with these different status fields, you can see what step of the process this particular case is in. By default, it's new, so we're going to leave it there. Case origin has a couple of options by default, such as email, phone, and web. You can go in and customize this list, but in this case, let's say that Winter called in and it's actually a phone-based case. And now we're just going to go ahead and click Save. So now that I've clicked Save, a couple of things have happened. It's created a case number, which I can then relay back to Winter, and a couple of other fields are displayed, such as contact phone and contact email. And then down here I have some related list areas, such as solutions and activities, as well as case comment. Now, once a case is created, you're going to want to be able to get back to it easily. So inside of Salesforce, we can expose the Cases tab. So if you look across the top, we don't actually see that tab here. So I can click on the plus sign on the far right-hand side, click Customize My Tabs, and then I can grab that Case tab, move it up a bit, and click Save. And then I now have the ability to click on Cases. So I'm going to do that. So now that I've clicked on the Cases tab, I can see, for example, a list of all the open cases that I have in the system. And you can see here that I've got that case that I created. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the case number, and you can see I've been brought back right to the case. So using the Cases tab, you can customize different list views. So for example, I can just see my cases where I'm the owner of the case, or I can see all the open cases as well. Using these list views is very important because you can also create queues for cases that come in that don't necessarily have someone to work on them yet. So if your company has a customer service and a tech support department, you can have a queue set up that allows for cases to go directly to the customer service team versus technical support. For, a billing issue would go to customer service versus a technical issue which would go to tech support. Next, we're going to talk about creating case assignment rules. There's a couple of following points to keep in mind when creating your case assignment rules. One, you can assign cases to users or queues in a variety of ways. Only one assignment rule can be active at a time, and you can update case ownership with a user or queue. So what this means is you can assign a case to a user or a queue based on a variety of ways. You can use different criteria, such as where the case is coming in from, what the different product interest is or geography might be for that particular area. So that case that comes in can be controlled based on the criteria of the case. You can even do certain things like look for keywords in the case. So for example, if somebody mentions that they need to update their credit card information, you can actually program Salesforce to look for the words credit card and then assign it to a particular queue for billing issues, for example. One thing to keep in mind is that you can only have one assignment rule at a time. Now, for some, that seems a little, confusing because, of course, you need to have different rules. Well, the reality is you have one rule, but you can have multiple rule entries. So you have one primary rule, but then the rule entries allow you to control what happens when the various criteria are met. It's just a matter of Salesforce going in the order of those particular rules, which you'll go over here in a second. And then lastly, the most important part of these assignment rules is it updates the ownership of the case. So it's either going to update it to a user or it's going to update it to a queue. Whatever the case may be, these case assignment rules are going to control the ownership of the cases. So we're going to go ahead and jump into Salesforce now and actually demonstrate creating some case assignment rules. So I'm logged into my org. I'm going to start by clicking on Setup in the top right-hand corner. Over on the left-hand side, I'm going to click Customize and scroll down to Cases. And then I'm presented here with a variety of options. So first I'm going to click on Case Assignment Rules. Now, if you already have an assignment rule created in your org, you're going to see it here as being active. And I can click on, for example, the rule name Main Office, and I'm taken directly to this assignment rule. Now, this assignment rule is pretty minimum. Really, it just changes the case owner to Justin Davis whenever the type equals a feature request. Well, I want to add to that. So I'm going to click on New, and I'm going to choose the sort order as number 2 since we already have a number 1 there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put case type. Let's say, for example, the case type is going to be, a problem. And then I also want to filter on the case origin. So let's say the case origin is, email, for example. So what this rule is doing is if the type field comes in as a problem and the origin is over email, so it gets sent in via email to case, which we'll actually talk about in a minute, then we can control who the owner is. So I can come over here and I can put in, Justin Davis, and that's going to make me the, particular owner of that case. At this point, I can click Save. And then you can see that my rule entry has been added. Now, if your company is working to, set up different assignment rules, what you can do is actually, deactivate this case assignment rule so there's no active rule at any given time. And then you can come over here and actually create a second assignment rule. So you can see here it's no longer active, but let's say I want to create some new rules. So let's say new rule, main office, something like that. And then I can make it active so that way it becomes the active rule. And remember, you can only have one active rule at a time, but the active rule can have multiple criteria, multiple rule entries. So here I can put, again, sort order number 1, and then I can come over here and I can do the exact same thing. I can configure, what the criteria will be based on, that specific issue with that case. And now another popular option is to create a queue. So I can come over here under Manage Users and click on Queues. Now you can see I've got 2 lead queues set up, but I don't have any case queues. So I'm going to click on this New button, and I'm going to call it, unassigned cases. So this might be, for example, cases that come in that I'm not really sure who the owner should be, but I'm going to go ahead and add all the individuals to the Salesforce org here that can access that. So now I can actually go back to cases and I can click on any case I have, and for example I can change the case owner, and when Salesforce loads you'll see that I can choose a queue. So I can have this actually default to the unassigned cases queue. So that's who the owner will be. So likewise I can go back and I can adjust my case assignment rules. So I can come back under cases, click on case assignment rules, and I can adjust this rule here. And for example, I can create a new entry. So I'm going to choose sort order as 1, and I'm going to choose case origin equals the web, for example. And then I'm going to change this from a user to a queue. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to just call it unassigned and click Save. And then what will happen is it's going to save my change. And whenever a new case comes in where the case origin equals web, it's going to assign it to the unassigned cases queue, as you can see here on the right-hand side. Now, something important to keep in mind is that anytime you're filtering for something, you have to remember to filter for something that does not exist. For example, what happens if the case origin field is blank? So you need to come back over here and say case origin equals blank, for example. And so, where should those cases go? So creating assignment rules is a little bit tricky because you have to plan for, what happens if you have that data, that information, but what happens if you don't? You need to plan for all scenarios. Usually at the end of an assignment rule that we set up, we'll put some kind of catch-all criteria in there that says, if these 5 criteria aren't met, then, at the end of the line, push these cases over to, an unassigned cases queue, or, assign it to, let's say, the customer service manager. That way they don't end up slipping through the cracks. Otherwise, the case owner is going to end up being your the default case owner that you have in the system. So if I come over here under cases, I can change support settings. So under these support settings, for example, I've got my default user is Justin Davis, which is myself. So, you can also make a variety of other changes here. But the bottom line is, if you don't have an active case assignment rule in place, or you have an active rule that doesn't cover all scenarios, then your default case owner, which is a lot of times the system administrator, the person that first set up Salesforce, then it's going to go into that person's name. And if you want to change that, you can always come back here under Customize and then go to Cases, and then you can actually click on Support Settings to see this page. So the next topic we're going to cover is case escalation rules. So with case escalation rules, there's a couple of points to keep in mind. Escalating cases can happen based on timing or a case issue. You can also control assignments based on criteria and business hours, and you can also make critical issues visible to management. So a lot of companies out there have agreements with their customers where support issues need to be resolved within a certain period of time. So in those cases, an escalation rule can be used to escalate that issue up to management or to a higher visibility team. So let's say one of your biggest customers has an issue that comes in and it's, preventing them from moving forward or getting work done. The software that they purchased from you isn't working as intended and it's just a major showstopper. You can actually set up an escalation rule that whenever that case comes in, if it's not resolved within 2 hours, for example, you can actually have that case assigned to a more strategic team that's going to give more attention to that specific customer. You can also make it based on other criteria. You can say, for example, if there's a specific product issue or there's a service issue that, the company needs to spend a lot of time trying to resolve. Let's say you've got a client that's using a brand new beta product of yours. That can also be routed and cared for with a specific team, and that can also be escalated right away. So the next thing we're going to do here is jump into Salesforce and create an escalation rule. So I'm logged into Salesforce, and again, I'm going to click in the setup in the top right corner. Over on the left-hand side, I'm going to click on Customize and click on Cases. And so here, just below Case Assignment Rules, which we just talked about, I'm going to click on Escalation Rules. So on the Escalation Rules page, just like Assignment Rules, you can see I have one active escalation rule. So here I'm going to go ahead and click on that rule name. And as you can see here, it's very simple. So I have one rule entry where the account name equals Apple. So I'm going to edit that and see what the rule entry actually is. So we can see that whenever the account name equals Apple, then I want this case to be assigned to Justin Davis after 1 hour and 0 minutes if the case has not been resolved. So, Apple computers would obviously be a huge customer of ours, or anyone really. So in this particular case, we have this VIP customer rule set up. I can also come in here and click New and create a new rule entry. So I can come down and choose, let's say the account name is, Google, for example. In here, I can also choose if I want to use business hours or not. I can also choose to ignore the business hours. Let's say if I'm running a 24-hour, service department, now I'm going to click Save. Once I click Save, I'm going to then be prompted for an escalation action. So here I'm going to click New, and I have the ability to choose after how long will this case be escalated. So if I put a 1 in here, that'll stand for 1 hour and 0 minutes. I can also do 2 hours. That's a pretty common option as well. And then I have the ability to actually reassign the case. So I can have it reassigned to Justin Davis, for example, and then I can also choose my notification template. So the template that goes out is an email template set up in Salesforce in advance, and it's specifically for, new assignments and case escalation. So I'm going to fill that in and click Save. So that rule entry is now complete. So I'm going to go back to VIP customer, and I'm going to see, okay, I've got two huge companies here, but basically if a case comes in where the account name equals Apple, we want those actions to take place. Same goes with Google. Now, let's say I have cases that come in that are not from those specific, companies. I can come back down here and put, for example, account name equals blank, for example, or let's say it's not equal to Google or Apple. So this would be pretty much for, everyone else, the other customer companies that you may have. In that case, maybe the escalation is really after 24 hours. Maybe it's only critical if the case has not been resolved within 24 hours as far as getting the attention of a service manager or getting it escalated likewise. So I'm going to come back here, and now I have 3 rule entries for my VIP customer escalation rule. First, Salesforce is going to evaluate if the account is Apple or not. If it isn't, it's going to move on to Google. And if it's not Google, it's then going to evaluate this last rule here that says if the account is not equal to Google or Apple, which will be pretty much everything else, even if it's blank, then it will take those actions, but only after 24 hours. So that would be for that 3rd rule entry. And just like case assignment rules, with escalation rules, you can have multiple rules, but you can only have one active at a time. So I can also come in here and create, let's call it my test escalation rule. So I can be testing this out, and it doesn't necessarily have to be active yet. I can come in here and start creating new rule entries, but it's pretty simple. So with case escalation rules, you have the rule itself, the name of the rule, whether it's active or not. Then you have the individual rule entries, which you can have as many as you want. Then down here below, we have the escalation actions. So there's really 3 parts to creating case escalation rules in Salesforce. The next area in Salesforce we're going to talk about is solutions. There's a couple of key points to keep in mind when enabling solutions. You need to enable solutions first before you can configure them. Enabling solution browsing will also give access to service representatives. And you can also enable HTML solutions and solution summary. So in short, solutions are their articles and its content inside of Salesforce that you can use in a very lightweight manner on cases. So if you have a case where, someone's trying to reset a password, then their Salesforce will prompt you for a solution based on that keyword. So there's another feature called knowledge base, which we'll also talk about here in a second. And with Salesforce knowledge, it's a true knowledge base. Whereas solutions, it's more like quick resolutions to common problems. Whereas a knowledge base is much more robust and comprehensive. So the first thing we need to do is actually get into Salesforce and actually turn on solutions. So I'm logged in, and I'm going to click on Setup in the top right-hand corner. Over here, I'm going to come under Customize, and you'll actually find Solutions as its own menu option. I'm going to click on Solutions, and then I'm going to click on Solution Settings. Now on this Solution Setting page, there's a bunch of different options we're going to talk through. So I'm going to go ahead and click Edit. The first one here allows us to turn on Browse Solutions. So I'm going to go ahead and check that checkbox. So what that allows individuals to do is actually browse through a list of solutions that aren't necessarily tied to a specific case. I also have the ability to turn on multilingual solutions. So if I'm running more than one language in Salesforce, I can use the multilingual support option and check that there. I can also turn it on if I'm running a self-service portal. It's not a common option. Most Salesforce customers aren't using the Salesforce service portal anymore. I don't think that'll be a question on the exam, but just something to keep in mind. The more important options are down here. So you definitely want to enable HTML solutions. They're not going to be very interesting without the HTML enabled. So HTML gives your users the ability to have graphics and different types of text and font and whatnot, be able to bold and make lists. And if you have HTML not enabled, it's just going to be, sort of boring text. And if you're okay with that, that's fine. Leave that checkbox unchecked. But for most companies, you do want to check that checkbox. You can also check whether a solution summary is displayed, as well as if you have any kind of inline solution category breadcrumbs you want. I'm going to leave that unchecked. It's not really necessary, so I'm just going to leave that as is and click Save. So at this point, we're ready to start setting up solutions. We've enabled the various options we want enabled, and the next thing we're going to go over here is actually configuring solutions. So now let's actually talk about creating solutions. So creating solutions records common solutions to common problems. You can attach cases and send them to customers. You can also choose whether to display them internally or publicly. So as we talked about before, solutions is really a very basic way to track, case resolution, so what should be taken to resolve a specific issue. Whereas a knowledge base is much more robust. Solutions is just a very basic version of that. So let's jump into Salesforce and actually create a solution. So I'm logged into Salesforce and I'm going to click on my Solutions tab here. So once I've clicked on the tab, I can then come down below and click New. On the subject solution title here, I can actually choose my title. Let's say that, computer's making a noise. So we've got computer noise as a solution title, and then in here I can actually put what the solution will be. So I'm going to choose reset the power. Now here I can actually choose, different type of formatting options, just like I mentioned. We can make, text larger or smaller, also change the font size accordingly. But for this point, I'm just going to click save and save my solution. So it's very simple. If you want to edit the details, you can come in here and edit them as well. You can also attach any kind of files you want to the solution. And if you click on the solution tab, then you can also see any other recent solutions that are inside of Salesforce. You can also do a search for them. For example, if I want to look for solutions where power is part of an issue here, I can come down here and I can see that as part of my solution search results. So there's really not much to it. I click on the Solutions tab, I click New, I fill out the solution title and body, I click Save, and it's done. That's all that needs to take place. So now let's talk about actually attaching solutions to cases. When attaching solutions to cases, there's a few things to keep in mind. You can search for and find solutions based on various keywords. You can also search for relevant reviewed and unreviewed solutions, and you can send solutions directly to customers from case records. So we're logged into Salesforce here, and the next thing we're going to do is demonstrate attaching a solution to a case. So I'm going to click on the Cases tab, and I'm going to open up a case that I have here. So you can see that I have the subject of power, description, I have a power reset problem. Now keep in mind, a lot of times when customers send in cases via web or via email, they don't always put a lot of, description. So this is pretty darn realistic actually. So we have the subject of power and description of power reset. What I can come down here is I can actually click on this View Select Suggested Solutions button. And what it'll do is it's actually going to search for a solution based on keywords and show me a score. So you can see 100% here versus 18%. So these are the recommended solutions Salesforce is putting forward. I'm going to click Select and choose this solution. And you can now see that this power reset solution was the solution that's actually going to be provided to this particular customer. I can also click on the solution number and see it here, press the power reset button, for example. And, we can have a history of the solutions added. Now, I can also click on the View Suggested Solutions and see another. So I can click on Select here and I can add multiple solutions to this particular case in the system. So the whole point here is that we want to see a running history of the solutions that was given to the specific contact to better understand what solutions work, which ones don't work. So for example, there are certain solutions that may work better than others, and this is where we can track that. So when we go to close this case, if the case gets reopened, we can re-examine these solutions down here and see if they were comprehensive enough, if they were actually, if they actually resolved the problem or not. So it's real simple to attach solutions to cases. You can also search by keyword or click on Find Solution. So it's very simple. You do it right off the cases, case record here. It gets attached and you're done. The next thing we're going to talk about is enabling knowledge. There's a few things to keep in mind when enabling knowledge. You can create content called articles, and so just like knowledge-based articles that other companies have, that's exactly the same thing here. So within Salesforce, you have the ability to have knowledge-based articles. You can also have multiple languages, so you can have different languages that are allowed. It's essentially a company-wide knowledge base, and knowledge feature licenses are required. So if you can see over here in our graphic, we have 2 total knowledge user licenses. So these are licenses that are purchased on top of the Service Cloud. So with Salesforce, you need to have these feature licenses turned on in order for knowledge to work. Now, I've talked about the differences here, but I'll talk about it again. Solutions is a very lightweight manner in which to track which resolutions were provided to customers when they have case issues. Knowledge is a much more comprehensive database of the different questions that customers have, and it's meant to be exposed publicly as well as internally for online users to search using communities or some other method. So knowledge base can also have categories and tags, whereas solutions, as you saw, was just a very basic way to track those resolutions. They do overlap in purpose though. So knowledge-based articles can be used in a lot of the same ways as cases, but knowledge is really meant to be more of a standalone feature, offering, whereas solutions is really, really dependent on cases. So that's really the main differences between the two. So the next thing we're going to do here is jump into Salesforce and get knowledge set up. So we're logged into Salesforce now, and we're going to get knowledge enabled. So I'm going to click on Setup in the top right-hand corner. And over on the left-hand side, I'm going to come over here to Customize. And I'm going to scroll down and find knowledge. Now there's a couple of options here. There's knowledge settings, which you might want to click on right away, but the reality is you have to create an article type first. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to click on this create an article type now, and I'm going to create an article type. So I'm going to click this new button, and I'm just going to copy the example that is here. And I'm going to check that starts with a vowel sound checkbox and click Save. So knowledge is a little bit funny in that you need to create an article type first in order for it to work throughout the system. So at this point, knowledge has been turned on. Another important issue is that the users that have access to knowledge need to have the knowledge user checkbox checked. So I'm going to click over to my user record here, and you can see that I've got the knowledge checkbox checked. So this gives me access to knowledge in Salesforce. If I uncheck it, it's going to restrict access and I won't be able to go back into knowledge. Now I can come back over here under Customize and click on Knowledge, and I can click on Knowledge Settings, for example. Now what I'm ready to do is click Yes and enable Salesforce Knowledge. So this is a step that can't be undone. So once you've turned it on, you can't turn it off. Not a big deal for most Salesforce customers, just something to keep in mind. So at this point, we have our article created, knowledge is turned on, and it's enabled and ready to be customized. So our next topic is going to be configuring knowledge. So with knowledge, you can create articles for internal use or public viewing. You create article types for better categorization of those articles, and you can make it visible in communities or the company website. So we're going to go ahead and jump into Salesforce and demonstrate that. So we're back into Salesforce here, right where we left off. So we can see that we've got a couple of different knowledge settings that we can edit. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this edit button here, and I'm going to talk through these. So we have the ability to allow users to create and edit articles from the Articles tab. That's a no-brainer. Definitely leave that checked. We also have the ability to activate the validation status field. And so that's just a field that says that the article's been validated by some outside source. So users can create articles, but there needs to be moderator essentially of that particular article. There's a validation status drop-down menu, a pick list field there. We also have the ability to say whether or not it's possible to add, any external multimedia content to the editor in Salesforce. We can also come in here and choose different article summaries. So I'm going to check all these different checkboxes. I want them to all be made available here. Essentially, the internal app would be the internal users of Salesforce. Customer would be like a customer communities portal. Partner, similar, would be the partner portal. So scrolling down here, we have the ability to suggest articles for cases considering the case content. So that's similar to solutions in that it searches for keywords in the case and then displays knowledge articles based on that. And that's in the Knowledge One app. It'll also highlight relevant article text, do some autocompletes for you. I would just say check all of those. And then we have the ability to come down here and choose whether we want multiple languages or a single language. For most Salesforce customers, it's going to be English as the single language. I can also come down here and choose to whether or not I want users to create an article from a case. I'm going to leave this one unchecked. It's best to not leave this checked because you really don't want users creating articles right off of a case. There needs to be, generally, there needs to be a more formal process for creating articles. Otherwise, you're just going to have people creating a lot of articles that don't have a lot of value and they're not well thought out. You want to think through the articles and make sure that, the structure and hierarchy of the articles make sense. In other words, you don't just want anyone to just create an article. There needs to be a process in place to ensure that your articles are high quality content and they're actually correct. You can also come down here and choose whether or not you want to enable a list of cases that are linked to an article. So what that does is you can go to an article and actually see what cases have been used, on that specific article. We also have the ability to allow users to share articles via public URLs. So we'll demonstrate that here in a second, but you can create an article that will actually have its own URL up at the top. And you can click on that URL and it'll take you directly to that article. So that's what that's about. I can also come down here and choose whether or not I want users to create an article from a reply. I definitely don't want to check that checkbox. That goes along with what I said earlier. You want to have a process in place for article creation. It shouldn't be some random thing that people do throughout the system. It needs to be, well thought out process where you've got articles and draft articles and then those get published. So you wanted to make sure good advice is being disseminated, not bad advice. So that is, the knowledge settings area in a nutshell here. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and click Save and save those settings. So I'm now logged into an area of Salesforce with knowledge up and open. So there's two main tabs to work with here, the articles and the article management. So first I'm on this article management tab. So I can see here I've got a couple of different articles that have been created. I can click on New to create a new article, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to choose a title of, let's say, Billing Issue. And then I'm going to be prompted to choose a URL name. It's going to default that from the title, and I can also put in a summary here. So I also have the ability whether or not I want to choose a validation status. I'm going to choose validated. So this shows other users that this article has been validated and it's accurate. So I'm going to check these different channel checkboxes here. I want this article to be displayed everywhere. And now I'm going to go ahead and click Save. Once I click Save, I've got a couple of different options here. I can click on Assign, and I can assign this article to be owned by a specific user, in this case myself, Justin Davis. I can also preview the article, so I can choose whether or not I want to preview it here. And you can see that we've got this link that shows up. So there's a link to that particular article, and I can also publish it. So I can click on that Publish button and choose to publish now. So I'm going to click OK to publish it now. And then that article is going to move into a published status. Now, if I want to also preview any of these other articles, I can click on this preview link, by the way, and then I can actually see what the article information is here and get a link to it as well. So from this article page, I have the ability to also come in here and edit articles. I can publish them, preview them, etc., and all of the like. So Articles is, very similar to solutions, except as you can see, there's just a lot more features available. So I can come back here under, let's say billing issues, that billing issue article, and you can see that I've got the URL to it. Users can come along and they can rate it. We can also edit it directly from this particular page. And, we have the ability to do all of this just like we did in solutions, plus a lot more of these new features. So in short, knowledge base runs off of articles and the knowledge base articles, and it offers a very robust manner by which you can search and sort, create articles, and add multimedia content to the articles, and then have them published and referenced in Salesforce. So that's knowledge base in its core feature. The next thing we're going to talk about here is creating a web-to-case form. So web-to-case in Salesforce is a very simple web form that, when created, allows you to create a case from a web page. So this is not a tricky one, but a lot of times customers are a little bit confused as to what this actually does. So the following key points are that you choose fields from the available fields column, as you can see here, from available fields to selected. You also choose a thank you return URL for after the case has actually been submitted. And then, of course, you generate the HTML using that generate button. So what this does is it literally generates the HTML that a Salesforce customer would put on their website using a web developer or web design company, whoever the webmaster is for that website. So some customers believe that this form will actually come pre-formatted. It definitely doesn't. You need to take that HTML and add formatting, a style sheet or a table or something at a minimum. Otherwise it's not going to have any format. So what we're going to do next is we're going to generate a web-to-case form, and we're actually going to show what that form looks like out of the box. So I'm logged into Salesforce, and I'm going to get started by clicking on the setup link in the top right corner. So over on the left-hand side, I'm going to go over to Customize, and here I can click on Cases, and you'll actually see that there isn't a web-to-case option here. So, funny enough, the Salesforce has put the web-to-case option under self-service. So what you should do is come over here under web-to-case HTML generator, and then you can choose what fields you want from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, and then choose a thank you URL. So I'm gonna pick that now, cloudcreations.com, for example, and then over here on the left-hand side, I'm gonna choose what fields I want to have made available. So it's real simple. I just choose whatever fields are available on cases as my selected fields. So any custom fields that you've created can be added here under selected. So now I'm going to click on generate. And it's just going to generate some very basic HTML for me. So I'm going to select all, and I'm going to copy this. Now before I paste this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down, and we're just going to look at it real quick here. So it's very simple. You have a meta text area, and you've got a bunch of comments in here, but essentially it's just a post. And for those of you that are technical, it's just a very simple post to the Salesforce server. For everybody else, this form is a standalone form. You don't have to tie it into anything. You can literally paste it anywhere on the internet. If somebody submits a record from here, it's going to go into your Salesforce org, your Salesforce account. So scrolling down, you can see just some HTML here that you can modify, make it look however you want it to look. If you've got drop-down menus, then you can see those option values here. And at this point, you can just click Finished. So when you click Finished, all it does is it just brings you back to this web-to-case page. So there's a couple of other options you can set up. For starters, you can choose whether to enable or disable it. Most Salesforce accounts come with it enabled by default anyway. You can also choose a default case origin. Most customers want web as the default case origin because that's where it's coming from. You can also set up an auto response. So if a case comes in from this web to case form, you can just put in a template here from any email template you've created as an automatic response. So the next step in this process is to, what you're going to do is you're going to have that code and you're going to want to send that to a web developer. So here, for example, you can see we've got all that code. I've just pasted it to a notepad file. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save this specific file. I'm going to call it, web2case.html, and select all files and click save. And what that's going to do is it's just going to create this notepad file as an HTML file on my desktop. So once you've saved that HTML file, you can literally open it up right in your browser. So I'm going to open it here, and this is what that web2case form looks like. So it literally looks just like this. So you need to come in here and do some formatting with the HTML. But if you haven't done any kind of formatting, you can come over here and fill out all the pertinent information into the individual fields. So I'm going to put my email. I'll put subject. I can say that I've got a product issue. And for the description, I'm going to be difficult. I'm going to say, call me. And then here I can put in the type. I'm going to put a problem. Case reason, I'm going to put new problem. And then at this point, I'm just going to click submit query. So what that's going to do is it's going to take me to my thank you page, and it's going to submit a case into Salesforce. So if I come back under cases, I do need to wait at least a minute or two for that case to show up. Once that case does show up, then I can come back in here and I can actually see that the case has been submitted. For example, we've got this new case in here that was created from that form. You could see subject, product issue, description, call me. And what it did is it automatically found my contact name and it linked the case to my contact. So I can actually click on my contact and I can see the cases that have been submitted. But here you can see that directly from that web2case form, I didn't touch the code at all. It just created a new case inside of Salesforce. So it works very, very simple. A few things to keep in mind is that web2case, when they're created, they do respect assignment rules. Also, you can wait up to 2 minutes for a case to come in, just depending on how busy Salesforce is that particular day, the Salesforce service, I should say. But in general, you can definitely expect it within 2 minutes. A lot of times I see it usually in about 30 seconds or less, but it can take up to 2 minutes for that case to be created. The next thing we're going to talk about here is creating an email to case address. With Salesforce, you've got a couple of options to create cases. We've already gone over creating a case manually. We just went over how to collect a case from a website using the web2case form. The other option here is using email to case. Now, email to case in Salesforce allows a case to be created directly from an inbound email. You can also set up, forwarding rules on your email server to forward those emails. That's what most customers do. And the contacts are going to be matched based on the email address, very similar to the web2case form. So in short, what you can do is you set up an email address at your company that when an email is sent to that email address, a new case is created in Salesforce. So you can have support at salesforce.com, for example, have a case automatically created based on that inbound email, which is what a lot of companies do. So next we're going to jump into Salesforce and get this email to case set up. So I'm logged into Salesforce here, and like always, I'm going to jump into the setup area. Over on the left-hand side, I'm going to click Customize, and I'm going to click on Cases, and then Email to Case. So I'm on the Email to Case page, and I actually have Email to Case disabled. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Edit, and I'm going to talk through these different options. So the first thing I want to do is click on the Enable Email to Case checkbox. What this will do is it will permit inbound emails at the service address to create cases inside of Salesforce. I also want new case owners to be notified whenever those emails come in, and I want to enable HTML email. So the notifying case owners is pretty self-explanatory. They'll get an email whenever a new case comes in. However, this enable HTML email means that the HTML format of that email is brought into Salesforce rather than just plain text. We also have a few options for inserting the thread ID. So when using the email to case option, you can send replies and receive replies, and there's a reference ID that's included in that email. So here you have the option to choose it in the subject or the body or both. We can also choose whether or not the user signature is before the email threads or after. I'll just leave that unchecked because it's not really relevant and move on here. So the next one is the email enable the on-demand service. So for most customers, this is the option that you would want. So on the certification exam, you're going to need to understand the difference between on-demand email service and, the standard service. So the standard service is much more involved, where you have to install the email to case agent. So if you can actually see that here, you have to install that behind your firewall. In reality, with on-demand, it's quite simple. You set up a forwarding rule from your email server to send an email to the service address that we're going to create here in a second. We also have a couple of options for, if the email rate limit has been, received, we can requeue the message and have it in sort of a holding area. We can bounce it or just delete it. And then if there's an unauthorized sender, you can either bounce it or just delete it as well. At this point, I'm going to click Save and let Salesforce save my settings. So there you can see everything's been set up. Now, I had previously created a routing address for demonstration purposes, and you can see here I've got the support team for support@salesforce.com. It's pending, and you can see that email service address there. Now, let's say I want to create a new one. I'm going to click on that new. So you can see here after that new button, I can then choose my email to Cal's routing information. So for the routing name, I'm going to choose, let's say Cloud Creations Support. And then for the email address, I'm going to choose something like support@cloudcreations.com. Now, it's very important that this email address is a real email address with a real, inbox, a real account. It's not a fake account. It has to be a real one set up by your email, service provider, whether that's in-house or external. You can also choose whether or not to save the email headers. So, check that checkbox if the headers are important. You can also choose where the emails are received from. So, what this would do is, allow you to have only emails come from certain domains if you want. For most companies, you can just leave that alone. Next down here is whether or not to create a task from an email. So if you want a task to be created for that inbound case, that inbound email, check that checkbox. I recommend leaving that unchecked. I'm not a big fan of automated tasks. I think tasks should be created manually for the most part so they actually get done. But if you do want an automated task created, go ahead and check that checkbox. And then down here, we also have a few options for case priority, high, medium, low, case origin, email. So these might seem very obvious from the onset, case origin over email. However, with case priority, you actually may want to set up 3 different support email addresses. So most companies just have one, but let's say you have a VIP customer where you want them to be able to send an email. You can put something like, tier 2 support at cloudcreations.com, and then all of those emails that come in will be of the level high. So the case priority for any of those emails will come in as high because it's sent directly to that tier 2 support. So at this point, I'm going to click Save, and I'm going to be prompted here. Now, this is very important. Just as I mentioned, that email address needs to be a real email address because right now, Salesforce is going to send a confirmation email with a link to that account. You need to click on that link in order to make that email address available. So at this point, I'm going to click OK. And as you can see here, I'm brought back to the page. So we've got this email address, which you see in italics because it hasn't been verified yet. And we've got this email service address created. Now, this is a very long email address. Now, you can actually copy and paste this, send an email to it, and a new case, within a minute or two, a new case will be created inside of the Salesforce account. So at this point, a lot of administrators get a little confused because they don't understand the relationship between this address here and this very long address there. The point is that there's no way in the world you'd want to give this address to one of your clients or one of your customers, right? So instead of giving them this very long address, you have that address, the tier 2 support at cloudcreations.com, which is much more memorable, that you can then hand out, put on your website, put on a business card, whatever the case may be. This is the one you give to customers. So again, you may ask, well, what's the connection between the two? In your email server, you need to set up a forwarding rule, like I mentioned before, that will forward 100% of the emails that are received to this address. So all the emails sent to this address need to be forwarded to this service address. So your email administrator needs to set up a forwarding rule that will forward all emails from that email address to this one. So this is the real email address. This is the one that Salesforce assigns you. It's this one where you need to set up that extra step that does a link, So an email received here automatically goes there. And then when you use it, you can simply click on the Cases tab. You can see all open cases. And then when that email's been sent and that case comes in, of course, you can always click refresh and just see that new case here right on the list. So we're logged into Salesforce, and now we're going to review some of those areas mentioned in the case study. So for starters, I'm going to click on Cases, and I'm going to check out a case. So they went ahead, United Containers, and set up the different fields and the drop-down menus to suit their business case. So that was the first aspect. Then the second one here was that they actually had some assignment rules in place. So I'm going to click on Cases and come over here and click on Case Assignment Rules, and I'm going to see that we've got that assignment rule, which we actually talked about earlier on, but we've got an assignment rule in place. And then one of the most important functions here is the dashboard. So we have the ability to see the case workload, open cases by priority, statuses of open cases by rep. So this all fits in perfectly with that, case study for United Containers, because this gives their company total visibility into what issues are coming in and, being able to report on it and see everything organized on one dashboard. So first, let's talk about email to case. So I'm going to click on Setup, and over on the left-hand side, I'm going to click on Customize, Cases, and I'm going to click on Email to Case. So you can see here that we've got 2 email to case addresses set up. So in the case of United Containers, they went ahead and created some routing addresses, and they confirmed those and are having those forwarded to the email service address here. So whenever an email is sent to support@unitedcontainers.com, that gets forwarded to their service address. The service address in Salesforce creates the case. The other thing that they did here was create a web to case form. So here I'm going to click on web to case under self-service, and they went ahead and enabled the web to case option, chose the default origin, and then they went to the HTML generator. So here they selected the different fields that they wanted displayed on the page. They clicked generate, and it generated that HTML. They provided that to their web developer, who then posted it on the website. So then anyone filling out the fields on that web to case form automatically had a case created in Salesforce on their behalf. So the key takeaways for this lesson are that the Service Cloud is for customer service and technical support teams to manage cases. Cases can be received through manual creation, email, or web forms, and that solutions and knowledge base are great resources for information.
This guide really helped, Justin. I will be prepared to deal with customer queries now, all thanks to Salesforce.
Not only managing inbound customer inquiries, companies can also spend too much money on custom development for common features. In the next lesson, we will find out how Salesforce addresses this issue.
Awesome. Let's move on.